Good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Salganikoff with the Chestnut Hill Conservancy, an educational center and advocate for the architecture, open space, and history of Chestnut Hill and surrounding communities in the Wissahickon watershed. Tonight's Ask the Experts presentation will cover residential solar electrical systems as a way to invest in clean energy and the local community, and will include a discussion about installation in historic houses. Ask the Experts is a free virtual program organized by the Chestnut Hill Conservancy and co-sponsored by the Chestnut Hill Community Association, addressing a featured topic by an expert on prevalent issues relating to historic home and landscape care. Thank you all for sharing your evening with us, and I hope you're all members of the Conservancy and CHCA or plan to be soon. Please make sure that you have muted yourself. We invite you to add any questions you have during the program in the chat for the moderated Q&A that will follow the lecture. Tonight's lecture and much of our work this year is made possible by our generous members and supporters. The Conservancy's lead sponsor for 2021, Bryn Mawr Trust, and the lead sponsor for this lecture series, JKJ Personal Insurance Advisors. I'm also proud to thank Milan Architects, SOMD Architects, the Nottingham Goodman Group of Merrill Lynch, Bowman Properties, Dennis F. Meyer Incorporated, and Airy Kitchens for their support of the Conservancy through 2021. I will now turn the unmute button over to our friend Allison Dizaro of our Ask the Experts presenting sponsor JKJ Insurance to say hello, and then to CHCA Executive Director Ann McNiff, and then to the Conservancy's program co-chair Jean McCoubry, who will introduce tonight's program and our wonderful speakers. Allison?
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Are you able to hear me, I hope? Thank you. As Lori said, my name is Allison Dizaro, and I just feel it's so special to be gathering here, together as a community, especially in light of what's been going on these days. I am, happy to be here both personally and professionally. My family and I live in Chestnut Hill, and we've enjoyed many of the Conservancy events over the years. Additionally, my company, Johnson, Kendall & Johnson, is very proud to support such an integral community organization like the Conservancy. Johnson, Kendall & Johnson, or JKJ, as we refer to it, so it's not such a mouthful, is an independently owned and local insurance agency that's been serving individuals and businesses for over 65 years. More specifically, my group, the Personal Insurance Division, partners with premium insurance companies like Chubb, Pure, and AIG, just to name a few, to work with our clients to protect their lifestyles and assets with products like homeowners insurance, automobile insurance, valuables and collections, and excess liability. I'm excited and interested to learn about solar energy, not only the benefit it provides to our homes and our communities, but also the important and necessary ways it helps us protect our environment and Earth. And on that note, I am very pleased to pass this on to Ann McNiff, the Executive Director of the Chestnut Hill Community Association.
Thank you, Allison, and welcome everyone. I'm Ann McNiff. I am, as Allison said, with the Chestnut Hill Community Association. We are very proud to be partnering with the Conservancy on these free community events. Especially during this time when information, if we can't come together in person to get it, if we can get it this way, we certainly want to take advantage of that opportunity. The Community Association has been around for 72 years. We are currently, in the last 2 years, have actually expanded our membership program to include something called a Passport to the Chestnut Hill Experience. All of this is information that I'm not going to go into here, but I would encourage you, if you are not already a member, to become so and to check out our website at www.chestnuthill.org. Our next community event is actually the 25th of this month, and it is a stretching class with Balanced Chestnut Hill during lunchtime, 12 to 12:30. It's a stretching Pilates, yoga, good for all ages and all skill levels. So if you're at all interested, please feel free to shoot me an email at ann@chestnuthill.org, or again, go to our website. So thanks again for attending. I'm really looking forward to learning more about solar energy. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jean McCoubrey.
Thank you. I'm Jean McCoubrey, and I'm a board member of the Conservancy and co-chair of its program committee. And I've introduced a couple of Ask the Experts sessions over the past year. As we've been virtual for almost a year now. And stay tuned for, we're hoping to present 3 more in the series over the course of 2021, and they will probably continue to be virtual this year. But in a way, that's great because we find that we can get even more participation. And so tonight, I'd like to introduce our speakers, Micah Gold-Markel, who's the co-founder of Solar States, which is a solar energy contractor based in Philadelphia. He's quite local. He's a Mount Airyite. And well, he crossed the border to come tonight, I guess. And Solar States is an installer and educator. They're also, for the 4th time in a row, they've been selected as a preferred installer for solar energy systems by the Solarize Philly program. And I'm expecting that he'll explain a little bit more about that to you. With him, we also have Chris Kurtz of Kurtz Roofing. Many of you may know that name well. It's a Winmore-based roofing company. I don't know what generation you're on now, Chris. 2nd, okay. And Chris also joins us from Mount Airy tonight. And I'm assuming that Micah and Chris are both very well rested today because it was almost impossible to do anything on a roof today. So with that, I'll hand it over to Micah and Chris.
Thanks so much.
And I just wanted to mention that please, with your questions, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to ask any questions you might have of the presenters. And at the end of when they finish talking, I'll try to organize those questions in sort of a logical manner, not necessarily in order. And that's the way we can field your questions to Chris and Micah. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jean, and welcome everyone. It's wow, lots of people on this Zoom. Thanks for coming out, everyone. Very impressive effort here. So I'm Micah Gold-Markel, lifelong Philadelphian. Grew up in Powelton Village. I got to give a shout out to one of my babysitters, Bob Simon. I got people on this Zoom who've known me since I was like 2 years old, so it's a little intimidating here. Solar States was founded in about 2008, and we were founded when the principles of Van Jones's book, The Green Collar Economy. If you haven't read the book, I really highly recommend it. Basically, in the book, he says the green wave can lift all boats. And when he said that, it really motivated me to think about environmentalism and what it meant to me. And I had a chance to speak with Van, actually, and he really challenged me, saying, you know, do you think a lot of the people that you grew up with in West Philly are environmentalists? And when I thought about it, I was like, well, no. And he said, well, that's a failing of you. You know, we aren't including everyone in this thing. And so when I founded Solar States, I made sure that our mission is to be the on-ramp to the green collar economy for inner city Philadelphians. And so everything we do is really based around that idea. So we do both solar installation and education, and we're also what's known as a certified B Corporation. For those of you who don't know what that is, it means that we have the 3 Ps, people, planet, profit, written into our bylaws. And a little bit deeper about what that means is that we have things like we can't pay minimum wage. It's actually illegal due to the way that our company is structured. So we have to pay a living wage. So everybody who comes in makes at least $16 an hour. And we're going to be bumping that up to $17 this year. We provide healthcare and 401ks for people who pretty much have never had those things before in their lives. And it's really, it's been fun to see the transformation of people who came to us knowing very little about solar and working their way up from junior installer all the way up to lead. I really love um, to tell the story about one of our workers. His name is Cottrell Holmes. He's an ex-offender. He went through a program called PowerCore PHL, where he was doing green stormwater infrastructure work. And then we trained him up on solar, and he came to us. And 2 years in, we did an employee review, and I sat with him and I said, "So Cottrell, man, like, how do you like the job? How's it going?" He goes, "Job, man." I'm like, what job? What are you talking about?" And I'm looking at him puzzled. I'm like, "What do you mean? We're talking about your job here, man. Focus." And he goes, "Oh no, this isn't a job. This is a career." And it was like this profound moment where I was like, man, this guy has a better understanding of what's going on here than I do. And you know, it's kind of crazy because we've sort of seen that cycle now repeat itself a number of times, and we know that it works. So you know, the big story about clean energy is saving the environment, and as well it should be, because you know, I firmly believe that the climate crisis is going to be the sort of defining crisis of my lifetime and my children's lifetimes. But you know, it's also about jobs, and I don't think we have done a good enough job branding this movement as about creating jobs. We're creating lots of good paying jobs for inner city Philadelphians, for making power right where it's used, the most efficient form of energy generation. So we've done a number of projects all around Philadelphia, even as far north as Massachusetts, as far south as Washington, D.C. Um, and we do pretty much everything. If you name something with solar, we've probably done it. I'm going to show you some examples of solar pergolas, solar roof decks, different mounting systems for solar on roofs. We've done solar on historic properties. Um, we've done solar on faux slate roofs. We'll talk a little bit about slate roofs. That's one of the reasons Chris is here. We have a lot of interactions with roofers to make sure that we maintain people's roofing warranties while we do the work. And now we increasingly do a lot of work with batteries. We are a Tesla certified installer, so we're installing a lot of power walls, a lot of backup generation. There's actually a community in Bala where it's illegal for them to have, or their HOA has rules that say you can't have a backup generator because it's too loud and, you know, too much, you know, fumes and things. So they are forgoing solar, but they're all getting power walls for their units for power outages. So there's tremendous interest in batteries. And of course, you know, I think I'd be remiss to say that our hearts, I'm sure, are all with the people in Texas who are suffering due to major power outages there. I think as climate change sets in more and more, we're going to see more dramatic climate-related events, and that's going to cause further disruption on a centralized power distribution network that is, frankly, very old. And so, you know, I think people are really starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, I could be without power in a really bad situation, and how can we fix that? And solar and batteries are just wonderful for that. And then we've also done a number of commercial solar installations, one of them at a great organization called Thermo Megatech out in Warminster. They were had battery backup plus solar, 300 kW solar array. And then also we put 2,000 solar panels on the roof of the Yards Brewing Company in Center City, Philadelphia at 5th and Spring Garden. So we do projects large and small, and we're really very community oriented in our hiring practices. So I'm going to share my screen now, show you some of the installs. If we have time, I'm also going to try to show you what the monitoring looks like, because it can be pretty cool to see what you know, some of the new developments in solar allow you to do. So just give me a moment while I share my screen. All right. So give me a thumbs up if everybody's seeing the screen here. All right, great. So as you can see, we have a number of solar projects here. Oh, I got to click on this one. This is so cool. Watch what happens here. I don't know how our guys did it, but they did it with a drone. They flew in. This is a school. You might be a little quick, but this was a school we did out in Middle Holland Township. It's really quite a spectacular solar array. I like how it came out. All right, so let me move this stuff around a little. Okay. So here's one of the more popular products that we're doing these days. This is a solar pergola. We actually have two clients who are neighbors here, so you can see some solar in the background there. That's also a solar array we did on a roof. This is called Brooklyn Solar Works, is the name of this pergola system. It's a prefab system that you can mount to structural members on the roof. And it cut down the cost a lot. We worked with the city of Philadelphia because we were doing pergolas for many years, and oh my gosh, was it a headache. We had to go through zoning processes and blah, blah, blah. Now solar pergolas, under the right circumstances with the right setbacks from the front of the house, are allowed by right. So we can get these through permitting a lot faster than in previous years. It is important, and Chris, you could jump in at any moment here, that we work with a roofer because we have to drill pretty far into the roofing typically to get to whatever structural member is underneath there, so that we can sink our bolts into that member and make sure that the whole thing is secure. So we work with roofers hand in hand in these situations to open up the roof, make sure the structural members are properly mounted, and then seal everything back up. Let's take a look at another style of solar here. So this is what's called a ballast weight D-dome installation. You'll notice the solar panels are sort of undulating here. It's an east-west facing system. And what this allows us to do is pack a lot more solar panels on the roof. The other thing that's nice about this is it's invisible from the ground. So when you're thinking about historic homes and solar, visibility from the street is really a big issue. Can you see this? Does it change the physical appearance of the building from the street? And so when you do a ballast weight, a very low profile solar array, typically you cannot see it from the street. And therefore, the historical folks tend to let that pass. Funny story, we've done, I would say, 5 to 7 projects on historical buildings. All of the processes were a little bit different. On one of them, I had to have a fellow employee stand down in the street, and I stood up there and sort of had the racking on the roof and had to like lean over and have them not see my hands on the roof, so that they knew like none of it would be seen before they would allow it. So we're willing to work with the historical commission, and in fact, Megan Schmidt, who works down there, I went to school with, so it's kind of funny when I run into her at the historical commission. It's like a high school reunion down there. This system is really great though, because it allows for low ballast weight. So ballast weight is basically just concrete blocks. This system does not put any holes in your roof. Like, who here wants to sign up for lots of holes in their roof? Like, nobody raises their hands when you say that. So, having a system that does not require any holes in the roof makes it very popular, particularly for flat roofs. Now, that's not to say that we can't do systems that do pierce the roof and make them very watertight. But with this particular system, you can bring concrete blocks up, you place them under the solar array, and each panel actually acts as a wind guard for the panel next to it. So there's very low wind lift, so you don't have to bring up a whole lot of weight onto the roof to hold the whole thing down. This is a very popular system because it also allows you to maximize the space on the roof. It used to be that solar panels were so expensive that you'd always try to get them at this like ideal tilt and facing south and all of that. But it turns out now that the solar panels have come down in cost so much that just fitting as many on the roof, even if they're not ideal, even if they're going to be in a little bit of shade, really is the play for most people. All right. This is a project we did prior to the Brooklyn Solar. We actually built this entire roof deck and solar structure. Don't know that I'll ever do it again. It was a real trial by fire and a difficult project, particularly spanning the pilot house. I don't know what I was thinking there, but the client really wanted it, and it came out really beautiful. And it's a particularly interesting solar panel choice, because that is a frameless glass solar panel that you're looking at. So I don't know if you can see, but it's a bit transparent. So it acts as a shade for the roof, and we sealed in between. And this particular shot doesn't have it, but we later came back and we put a gutter on the whole thing because it's sealed, and it's you know, a full-on roof for the roof deck there. So it really works well for both shade and energy production. But as I said, this is one of the more complicated projects that we've done. And we've got a special guest star tonight as well. It's my daughter, Mira. So you can take a look. You can see the sort of transparent piece of the solar panels a little bit better from this angle. So that was a great project we did, I believe, in South Philly. So we can also flush mount solar. And as you can see, this is a house that we did in Fishtown. And in these instances, we do have to penetrate the roof. We can create a curb, or what some might call a pitch pocket, and put our mounts into that. Chris, do you want to talk about any roofing issues around solar? You want to jump in here? Or you want to wait till I'm done?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think I can, right off the bat, just reiterate what you're saying about holes in roofs. We don't want holes in roofs. It's always better if you can plan a system that doesn't do that. And so, you know, when you have a ballasted system, like a lot of the ones that Mike has been showing, it's great because it's one less problem down the road. We have a system. I guess I should do a little introduction for myself. I'm Chris Kurtz, Vice President, Kurtz Construction Company. We specialize in roofing, carpentry, and masonry work on historic and older buildings. We're a second generation company, as Jean asked, and actually celebrating our 50-year anniversary this year. We've serviced many of the homes in this area and also completed projects at many significant religious and educational institutions in the Philadelphia area, as well as locations in New Jersey, Delaware, and New York. We believe that the work that we do, aside from solar, not only helps preserve the historic fabric, but also helps preserve the environment, because we're in the practice of repairing buildings, which typically takes a lot less energy than replacing buildings. Also, Kurtz Construction was an early proponent of solar energy. We started planning an installation for our building, which has our offices and shop. We planned that in 2011. And PECO connected us to the grid in 2012. That's a 100 kW system, and we've just rounded the corner with the return on investment. So we had with the 30% federal tax credit and the PA Sunshine, the Sunshine State Reward or credit program, we've just 8 years is where it worked out. That I did some calculations, so it's a good feeling to know that the system has performed as expected, and it's actually overperformed in a way. It's a 100 kW system, and the reports showing like over 100 kW every year. So that's good. It was sized to the amount of energy that our building was using at the time. We have a higher draw on the building now, so that's okay. But Pico at the time when we set ours up, I don't know, maybe Micah can talk about this more now. How I'm sort of a little bit in the past as far as where Pico is with all this, but at the time we sized our system just enough so that that we would produce a similar amount of energy to what we were using at the time, because Pico doesn't give, at the time they weren't giving much more credit than that. But our building, our facility, it's a 24,000 square foot commercial industrial warehouse type building. It has a standing seam roof on it, which is a preformed metal panel roofing system. And it's a nice system for solar because there are no penetrations. It's mechanically attached. I use a similar grid system for the PV panels, but they're clamped onto the roof. And so the electric conduits come down the side of the building. And as far as servicing the roof, it's not too bad either, because we can take the panels up with a few socket wrenches, really. And if you need to get underneath them, it's not too big a deal. They're low voltage and they're easy to quickly disconnect. And thankfully we haven't had to do much service underneath the array. But I think another nice thing about the panels is they provide some protection. You know, the sun is one of the most detrimental forces on a building, and a lot of things that, you know, so UV is powerful, and it takes away at least some of that element. In our case, that part of the building, the whole it's full coverage thing. So that's a nice feature. But yeah, again, about penetrations of the roof, we were really overly concerned about asphalt fiberglass shingles, and the systems that came out years ago are starting to prove themselves. And I'm finding, you know, at first, you know, I like to wait. I like to wait before I'm okay with recommending stuff like that, and new technologies and all that. We know the old ways are a lot of times really good, but some of these systems have started to prove themselves. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, aside from our building, we've also been involved in some residential projects, and both flat roofs or low slope roofs, depending on who you talk to. The roofs that are ballasted, those can be really good opportunities, and so can shingle roofs. Slate came up. I know there's questions about that. Honestly, a slate roof that's been there for 100 years or however long, I don't think it's the right place for solar. I think it's really wonderful to be able to maintain that roof, and there are other opportunities in other parts of the buildings a lot of the time where the panels can go. So yeah, if any questions, guys, just shoot at me, and Micah, I'll let you go some more.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, I absolutely agree. If you can do a ballast system, if you have a flat roof, like, definitely do it. But I do want to say that, you know, for asphalt shingled roofs, we have a system that works really well. And it involves flashing the roof so that you really seal the penetration, and you direct the water away from it. So it's a really tried and true system. It's really, really very effective. And so this particular system, this is what uses that flashing that I talked about. So when you have a pitch, you can sort of scoop the shingle up a little bit, put a metal flashing, but the metal flashing has a standoff built into it. And that's where the hole into the roof is. So you drop your lag bolt through that, and thereby, the water coming down the roof, it goes over top of the flashing, and we've sealed the hole. So it's like, belt and suspenders, like my dad walks around, he's got the belt on, it's everything. His pants are never going to fall down. So you're never going to get water into that hole. You know, and then you can do awnings. Who knew? Who knew you could do a solar awning, right? But you can. There's a product for that out there. This house, I mean, listen, it might not be everybody's cup of tea, but this is off of the back of the house. I thought it was a pretty creative solution. They wanted to have a roof deck and they didn't have much space to do a pergola, but they really wanted solar. So we went with a solar awning solution here, off of the back of the house. Let's see what else. And then we have, you can do any combination. So here we have a shingle roof with a flat roof. And, we were able to work with both to get this done. One thing I have to do is shout out the City of Philadelphia's Solarize Philly program. Not sure if those of you have heard about it much, but it is a huge, huge success. So it's run by the Philadelphia Energy Authority. It is the biggest solarized program in the country. Pretty amazing. Yes, in the country. And I believe we've had more than 600 houses signed up to be solarized through it, 600. And we personally have installed at least 300 of those. So it's been an incredibly successful program. And now we're starting the LMI component. So the way the program works is everybody saves money because we get a predictable lead sort of generation source. So we don't have to spend a lot of money advertising and all of that. So we can pass that savings back to the client. And then we give a little bit of that savings back to the Philadelphia Energy Authority. And what they've done is they've turned around and created what they call an LMI solar program. And you can go on their website and check it out. You can also hear about it from our website, which I'll put into the chat pretty soon. We have a great podcast where we talk about this with this stuff. The name of the podcast is called Yo Son. I love it. It's a great name for a podcast. I came up with that myself. So, so yeah, this LMI program, it's for low to middle income people. And it's really cool because it's this public-private partnership where Centennial Parkside CDC has decided to step up and stand behind all of the loans that are made. And why do we do this? Because we needed to find a lender who would not need credit checks. A lot of solar lending falls apart on the credit check for low to middle income people. And then we needed something that would guarantee savings. So the Philadelphia Energy Authority stepped up. They took some of the money that is paid back to them in fees, and they created a fund to help subsidize this so that the solar essentially costs 50% of what it normally would cost between the fees in this fund, and then they do a pre-buy of what's called SRECs. I don't want to go too deep into SRECs. Chris probably knows what SRECs are, but there are these credits you get when you generate solar energy. And to pre-buy them allows you to have more upfront capital to put towards a project, which takes the risk down, which means lenders are more likely to do it. So we came up between that mix of funding sources. We came up with a way for people to be able to take a loan, and their solar would only cost about $3,000. They can take a loan, so it's $0 out of pocket. They pay that $3,000 over 15 years, and they see at least a 30% savings on their electric bills. So it's pretty incredible. They save money. They're going to own the solar outright. It is not a leasing program where they get tied up in leases and high payments later on. It's extremely innovative, and actually I've been asked to talk about it all over the country because this is a real way that we can get solar into low to middle income neighborhoods all over the United States. And again, Philadelphia Energy Authority, the PEA, doing just marvelous, marvelous work. I also got to give a shout out to the federal government. You know, a lot of people say like, oh man, we can't have government like messing in business and all of this. Well, when I came into this industry, solar cost like, you know, $6.50 a watt to install. And what does that mean in real terms? Well, we did an installation of 444 solar panels at the Crane Arts Building. At the time, it was one of the largest in Philadelphia. And that cost a little bit over $500,000 to install at that time. We got grants and other things and to help us with that. And we made it work. But since that time, that was 10 years ago, that same system that cost me over $500,000 to install would be about $170,000 now. I mean, that's an incredible price drop. And most of that is due to the fact that the federal government stepped in and said, you know what? We're going to put a 30% federal tax credit out there. As Chris mentioned, he got PA Sunshine grant money. So the state had stepped up at that time. So it was really a great public-private partnership that has driven the cost of solar way, way down. I mean, extraordinary cost savings in terms of the materials. And you know, I don't think we highlight, everybody's probably heard of like Solyndra and the failures where government stepped in and, oh, it didn't work. But there have been a lot of successes out there, and we really need to make sure that people know about that. Anyhow, we'll go back to the different images. This is a beautiful home. So this is a south-facing array, ballast weight. And if you can see, if you look really closely, you can see the concrete blocks actually in front and between the rows of solar panels with this particular system. And that's the ballast weight that's holding them down. One of the reasons why it's so low slope is because you want to make sure that if you're using ballast weight to hold it down, that the wind loading isn't too crazy, right? You put the solar panel up too high of an angle, and you're going to have lots of wind load coming in and hitting the back of that solar panel, wanting to lift it off the roof. You're going to have to weigh that sucker down like crazy. I mean, you'll have to put a whole concrete structure on your roof to hold that thing down. So we lower the slope of it in order to limit the ballast weight. And we also put windscreens behind them. Believe it or not, we've had these systems up in Philadelphia, and they've survived 2 hurricane force type events. So it really is pretty incredible how well they stay there. People are always saying, well, if it's just weight holding it down, isn't something crazy going to happen? Well, I mean, not yet. Although I better watch what I say with all these crazy weather events. You know, we'll find something that lifts ballast weight arrays off of roofs or something. So here's a commercial building that we did. This is off of Lancaster Avenue in Philadelphia. This is the Green Line Coffee Shop. It's some artist spaces as well. And again, this has that sort of undulating solar look. It's all ballast weight there. There are really 2 types of inverters. There are microinverters and then string inverters. Microinverters mean you have 1 inverter per roof. 1 inverter per solar panel, whereas a string inverter means you have 1 inverter per roof. And all of the solar panels get strung together, and then they go to a central inverter to get inverted to AC. And then here we have a solar canopy. This was a pretty crazy project too. We created the roof wasn't strong enough here to hold the solar on it. So we built a steel superstructure that spanned from 66 feet from parapet wall to parapet wall that allowed us to put solar on top of that steel superstructure. And then we created some gaps for the mechanicals and various skylights there. That's Venanta at 2nd Street. Got to give a shout out, Marion Biddle, Purple House Solar. She did a wonderful job with her solar array. We installed that. Let me tell you, standing on a roof that is as steep as that is no joke. Wow, Marion had a super steep roof. I think she won the award for steepest roof that we've ever installed.
January 23rd,
my
my birthday,
and
2020. Enter Peter and
Uh-oh.
Emily Lapham. Peter brought to the struggle his training and experience as an architect and city planner.
Uh-oh. All right. So this is the last type of solar that I'll talk about, and then we'll open it up for questions and a little bit of conversation. But this is a carport, and this is becoming more and more popular. So we did this. You can actually see this off of 76 West as you're about to get onto the turnpike. If you look off to the side of the road, this is for a company called Click, and they wanted to have not only solar that covers their parking, a few parking spaces, but they also wanted to have EV charging, and that's that's a big thing. Is we're seeing people want EV charging, and SolarEdge makes a product that integrates EV charging with their inverter, so you can have the solar directly hooked up to your EV charger that then can power your electric car. Zero carbon lifestyle is really becoming a reality here. And it's pretty cool to see all the different products. The other big change in the industry is that we're becoming more sort of energy experts and less so focused on solar. And what I mean by that is almost all the systems we sell now, we also sell energy monitoring systems so that you can see how much power your house is using, not just how much the solar is generating. And so that can create a really cool dynamic on the monitoring side of things, where you can, wow, all of a sudden you can see, hey, my house drew X amount of solar from power from the grid, and then it created Y amount of solar, and this is when everything happened. And it's really a very cool way of looking at your energy use. So now I'm going to pull up some of the monitoring just to show you what some of that looks like. Gina, are we running all right on time, or should I cut it short and take some questions? Oh, you're on mute.
No, it's 7:42. I'd say maybe another 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. Give me a second. I'm going to pull up this monitoring system for a client of ours, just so you can see what that looks like. And the monitoring has gotten really cool. You can see all the way down to the solar panel, what each individual solar panel is producing. So it's like, man, it's way better than it used to be. The login here always takes a minute. Just give me a second. So this is the system I'm going to show you is not only a solar array, but it's also a battery backup system, and it's grid connected as well. But in this particular instance, the client could not, the grid was too old, and Pico didn't allow us to feed energy back into the grid. So we were able to set it up so that it'll send any excess energy back into the battery that's in the house. So it's pretty neat that it can work that way. Hold on one second. Let me get to the right day here. Okay. All right. So let me share my screen. Okay, so this is what solar monitoring looks like. You can see this is for today. The battery's all like pretty well drained. It can still send a little bit of energy, but it's not getting any solar. And so it's using, the house is using from the grid mostly. And that's due to the snow that's outside. So I've dialed it back. This is not today, everyone, just so you know. This is from October 31st of 2020. And I dialed it back so we would have some days where there was sunshine. There hasn't been sunshine for like 2 weeks, man. I'm feeling really depressed here. But so you can see here overnight, the red is the consumption from the grid. So overnight, the battery here ran out of energy and the house is running off of the grid. But look what happens at around 8 a.m. in the morning. All of a sudden, this green area kicks in. And the green area is the solar. And the blue area that's over here is what's known as self-consumption. I'm going to scroll down a little more so you can see. The blue line that's down here is the charge of the battery. So as we go along, 8 o'clock happens, all of a sudden the solar starts jumping up. And not only is the solar able to power the house, but it's overproducing. And that overproduction is getting thrown into the battery. So if you see the blue line below, the battery energy is going up and up and up and up and up. And then sometime afternoon, the battery peaks out. Well, if this house were allowed to feed back to the grid, at that point, we would have set the system up to say, feed that excess energy back to the grid and net meter it. Net metering is when your your pico meter spins backwards and you get a credit for it. So the way that solar sort of traditionally works is you produce a lot of energy during the day, you spin your meter backwards during the day, and then at night you use it from the grid and it spins forward, and you can net out to 0 or some percentage of your entire bill. So here you see that the solar quickly charged the battery up. Oh, but then, 4 o'clock arrives and the solar starts ducking out, but the battery has so much stored juice in it, it's powering the house the rest of the night. And you can see the battery draining here and into the next day, I would imagine. So we can look at November 1st. You see the battery made it the whole night long, boom, into the next day. And then it starts over, and this graph's a little choppy, but you kind of get how it can work. And it's really neat, and you have the power to view everything that's happening with your system. And here you can see the layout of the solar and what every solar panel produces at every moment in the power production on the inverter. And so with that, I think I'll stop sharing my screen. I'll shut my mouth, ready to take some questions. Gene, you're on mute.
I was going to try to organize them a little bit by topic. We have a few different categories. One is sort of basically, I'd say the economic category. Another is more aesthetic and historic. And what else do we have? Yeah, so I mean, there are a lot of questions about cost benefit and what is the threshold for solar making sense, and also does it make sense to ditch your fossil fuel sources and go and convert at least certain things in your house to electric? I think that, and then some of them are more individual, like, would it work on my roof? Would it work? Does it have to be a south facing roof? So sort of that combination of how do you assess what can be done on your particular house, and is it worth it? And Chris gave us an example of a payback period, but without getting into specific examples, could you just address how you do that analysis?
Sure. So there's a wonderful site, and it's run by the folks at NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratories. They've been studying the amount of solar irradiation to hit every zip code in the United States for the last 50 years. And so we can really predict how much energy a solar array will generate. So when we come and we do a proposal for you, we ask you basically for 2 things. What's your address? And send us a copy of your electric bill. With those 2 things, we can do a model based on satellite imagery. And let me tell you, the satellite imagery that we have is scary, man. Oh my gosh, you can get way close down to a house and like measure it and all this stuff. It's like so powerful. It's ridiculous. And so we can do a really good estimate of how many solar panels are going to sit on your roof and what direction they face and what tilt they are. And so we can come up with a power estimate and we can tell you, okay, we think you can, offset 80% of your power use. A lot of people get caught up with, oh, I want to be 100%, solar. Hey, I want to be 100% solar. Everybody wants to be, but it's not possible in every situation. You really have to play the cards you're dealt. If you don't have that much roof space, we can get you very high efficiency panels and do the best we can, but don't get too caught up with 100%. Now, that said, a lot of people can do 100% offset. But that's where, our consultants come in. They look at those stuff, they'll give you the estimate. And if it's something that, you think is reasonable for you, then you can move forward. In terms of cost, so there's a number of ways of looking at the cost. The real simple thing that I like to say is, if you can afford to pay for 10 years of electricity up front, you get 25 years of electricity. That's pretty much that simple. The payback is 10 years, and then the rest is gravy after that. If you want to take a loan, then it's no dollars out of pocket. Usually we can get the loan amount to be pretty close to what your PICO bill is. And so you're offsetting, 100% of your PICO bill or some percentage of it. And the loan amount is roughly what you would have paid to PICO. And so what it's doing is it's stabilizing your electric rate at what it is now for, the next 20 years. So that's a really great product too. In terms of how it works, so there's a 26% federal tax credit that's out there. And what does that mean? It means that you get 26% back on the total cost of the solar array. So if you spent $10,000, I'm just going to use round numbers for this. These are not examples of real systems, but if you spent $10,000 on your solar, you'd have a $2,600 tax credit that you could use over the next several years. And that's a dollar for dollar credit. It's not like depreciation or something that knocks your profitability down. It's really, the credit's pretty amazing. We don't have one mechanism in Pennsylvania that is available in a lot of states that surround us, and that's called PPAs, or power purchase agreements. And the reason for that is because we don't have a stable or high SREC price. I'm going to go a little bit into SRECs now. So I talked about it a little bit, but SRECs are solar renewable energy credits. And essentially in 2008, Ed Rendell created a law that said, we want 0.5% of our energy in the state to come from solar. And our goal is to have 0.5% by 2021. Like, we're going to do this, man. We're going to go solar. And like 0.5%, that's tiny, man. And so any electricity provider that's selling, a third-party provider that's selling electricity into the state, they have to have 0.5% come from solar. Well, they don't have any solar. So what they can do is they can buy these certificates from people who do have solar. So if I generated a megawatt hour of solar, I get a certificate. I can then sell that to this company, and they then can say, oh, I generated that solar, not that person over there. Okay, so as an example, if I were a third-party energy supplier and I sold 100 megawatt hours of energy into the state of Pennsylvania, and the requirement was that I had to have 10% of that come from solar, I'd have to go out and buy 10 SRECs. So I'd go out, I'd buy those 10 SRECs, and then I would show them to the state and say, hey, I'm in compliance with the law. That's what creates the SREC market. Well, because of the 0.5% that it's so low, we actually overproduce that. And SRECs have flooded the market. They're available everywhere, and thus they're basically worthless now. In states like New Jersey, you have SREC, you have requirements that say, oh, we want 5, 6, 7, up to 10% in some states come from solar. And there, SRECs have real value. And that way, when SRECs have real value, then you get third-party financiers who come in, who say, we'll take the tax benefits, we'll take the SRECs, and we'll give you free power. And that's how it's going to work. And man, those are magical. Like, that's what happens in New Jersey all the time. But unfortunately, we don't have access to that sort of finance mechanism here. So hopefully that answers the finance question.
I mean, there's also a corollary to the tax credit issue is it possible to take the tax credit for roof repairs that are necessary before installing the panels?
Right. So I kind of have to dance around this question a little bit to say, I am not a tax professional. Ask your tax professional. But
Okay.
other than that, I can say uh, we have numerous clients who have done that, and it has not been a problem for any of them. I believe the wording in the sort of tax code is something like the 26% tax credit is for solar and the supporting structure. So if you can make some sort of reasonable argument that you redid the roof to help support the solar, then you roll it in. But be sure to consult your tax professional.
And this is a question more about the supply, the supply that you can generate. What happens in the fall and winter months, and what percentage of your, well, you answered this a bit already, like how much of your power needs can you expect your installation to cover? But so I think you answered that, but
well,
what happened in weather like this? You know, obviously we're not producing today.
Right. So you'll produce as much as 5 times as much energy in the summer than you do the winter, particularly if you're a flat roof and it's a low sloped array. That's really, oriented for when the sun is high in the sky, like in the summertime. So you will produce significantly more in the summer. Now, Chris had mentioned, he has a standing seam roof, and that's pitched. What do you know what the pitch is on your roof, Chris? Oh, man, the old mute button.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a low sloped roof, so it's practically flat. Even though it's a standing seam roof, it's a system that has very little slope to it. It might be ½ inch per foot or something like that.
Okay. So, and do you have any well, it's so low slope, you probably don't have to deal with snow guards or anything.
That's correct.
So with more pitched roofs, we do have a snow guard solution that we can put at the bottom of the solar panels to sort of keep the snow up there. When solar is covered by snow, it's not working. And I do not recommend you go up and try to dust it off. Do not start walking around on the roof because you want more solar energy. I appreciate the thought, and I'm with you, but it's dangerous up there. Do not slip and fall off of your roof because you want more solar. I think what the best thing to do is just let it melt. Yes, you may lose some energy, but typically in the wintertime, it's pretty overcast. So you don't lose much energy by being covered by snow. And the bulk of the energy is created during the summertime. Remember, what we're talking about is net energy here, because 95% of the systems we do, you are grid connected. So the idea is not that you'll be matching every electron needed in the house with every electron generated from solar. The idea is that you're going to feed some back onto the grid, you're going to take some from the grid, and at the end of the day, you'll net out to zero.
Here's another cost question. Is there an approximate installed cost per square foot for a ballasted system, including inverters, with or without a power wall?
Oh man, that's a great question. I don't have the per square foot cost. I can tell you that our average project size in terms of raw cost is about $20,000. That's out of pocket. And that's before the tax credit. So I would say net after the tax credit, a lot less. You're somewhere around like $15,000.
You're saying for a typical residential system?
That's for a typical, well, it depends typical. So if typical is a Philly row home, it's significantly less. It's usually about $12,000 to $15,000 out of pocket. But if you're dealing with like an attached twin or you know, standalone homes, much more, you know, Chestnut Hill style homes that have bigger roofs, then I would say the higher end of that. We also installed power walls. To install 2 power walls, and I don't really recommend any less than 2. It's kind of silly that they sell only one because you can't power much with one. To do 2, I believe the installed cost is around $22,000, something like that. And again, if you do that with solar, you get the tax credit off of that. And it's cheaper than 20. I'm telling you sort of if you're installing Powerwall only, if you do Powerwall and solar, things get cheaper.
So it is possible to, with 2 power walls, that might be able to power a residential, a house for the duration of a short power outage?
Oh, definitely. You know, and it depends on the loads, right? I mean, I don't want to, this is not a one size fit all thing, but with 2 power walls, you get a significant amount of juice. I mean, if you're there and you're, you know, trying to run an electric oven and an electric dryer and your hair dryer all at once, you know, well, you're going to drain the battery pretty quickly doing that, right? But if you're like using lights and you just want to make sure your refrigerator stays cold and you have some electric heating that needs to come on, and you know, you're being reasonable about it, yeah, absolutely, you can hold out. And the neat thing with solar is that, you know, if you make it to the morning and the sun is coming up and the power's still out, well, the solar is going to recharge your battery. So, you know, you could potentially hold out indefinitely.
Okay. This was maybe more directed at Chris. We have a couple of questions about other roof materials. One is cedar shingles and the other is copper. And then a related question would be, you indicated that it's not recommended to install on a sloped slate roof, but if you have, for example, an older church building with a slate roof, what other options might be available for such a facility?
Well, that's a really site-specific question. It's really hard to determine that without seeing the whole site, because that's where I'd start. I'd want to look at maybe another area that might be better suited for it. It's not that it can't be done, don't get me wrong, but if the overall area, if there's another location to put it, maybe on the ground or maybe on a flat roof, I would push for that first, so as not to change the aesthetic. But if it's essential to, you know, if that's the only spot they have it, we can certainly make it work. And of course, it's going to depend on the condition of the existing roofing materials, and I would want to have an educated discussion about what the life expectancy is of the existing roof and weigh that against, you know, what the proposed solar installation might be. A lot of the times, you know, it does make sense to pair those 2 systems together. So if a roof is at the end of its life or nearing the end of its life, and that can be a good opportunity to do this up. A church situation, you know, if it's a historic church, if it's a modern church, you know, those are big things. I see, you know, when you're talking about solar, it's like, well, we kind of rolled the dice almost 10 years ago now, and there were a lot more question marks back then than there are now, as far as, you know, where politics and technology and all these factors that go into it. But I think that it's only gotten better and more promising. And so, you know, new construction, if it's a new church, the new historic, you know, this historic 100 years from now is going to be different, right? And so if that solar design is integrated into that architecture, then that's, you know, that can be really a beautiful solution depending on what other aspect. If it's an old historic church, I'm going to fight. I'm going to kind of fight to keep that. If it's a tile roof or a slate roof or something like that, you know, I'm going to sort of have to drag me to do that. You know, the customer is always right, but I always like to look at what the building, you know, what history the building has and all those other factors.
Totally.
So how's that for a wishy-washy answer?
Maybe the easier question is the what about cedar shingles and copper roofs?
Yeah, so cedar shingles, cedar shakes and shingles there's a whole world of cedar. A lot of what we use for wood roofing is cedar, Western red cedar. It's coming from British Columbia, and it's wonderful old growth cedar. It's really good material. And then there's other wood shingles that are getting put on roofs that is lower quality, and wouldn't recommend it for a roof anyhow, but it's happening. So, but the kind of roofing that we do, our company, is it's utilizing this really good material, and I wouldn't cover it with solar, but you might do, you know, you might use it where the solar isn't, you know, and have underneath the solar array, use something less expensive, you know, like asphalt shingles, modified bituminous roofing, or preformed metal panels, stuff like that goes really well underneath, because you're never going to see it. So why put this beautiful, expensive material underneath and cover it up?
Gene, if I may, I'd like to take Kim's question. Shout out to the Historical Commission.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Great point. So one of the things you have to do with solar is you have to have an exterior disconnect. And so that's a gray box, usually, you know, this tall by this wide, on the exterior of the building. That's required by you know, the first responders. Basically, they want to be able to come to a house and be able to cut the solar off if they need to start fighting a fire. And so the question is like, oh man, am I going to throw this like big gray wart onto the side of my historical, beautiful home? Like, no way. That's a terrible decision. So we've had a lot of discussions with the Historical Commission, with PICO, with first responders. And one of the compromises that we've come up with is if the building is listed with the Philadelphia Historical Commission, they will allow us to put a plaque at the front of the house or wherever the meters are that indicates that the disconnect is inside. And that's one of the very few cases where we can locate that piece of equipment out of sight. There are other ways we can do it. You know, sometimes you can plant shrubs and hide it or other things, but really putting it inside on historical properties is the move. And we've done that several times in order to, you know, meet the needs of the Historical Commission.
Okay, let's see. We have just a couple more questions. One is, this is really for both Micah and Chris. What is your opinion of Tesla roof tiles?
I get asked this frequently. So we're part of a national cooperative called Amicus, and we have several partners. It's a solar cooperative, and we have several partners who took on the challenge of installing the Tesla shingles, and they came back and reported to us and said, avoid this at all costs. As they were like, it took us a week to install it, where it would have taken us a day to install solar panels. There were problems. It was expensive. I think the future for what's called BIPV, or building integrated photovoltaics, is really bright, and there's some cool like window products out there, and there's some cool tile products for the roof. I don't think it's quite fully baked yet. It feels to me like they haven't gotten all of the bugs out of it, and the cost is a bit prohibitive at this point, but we're keeping an eye on it for something for the future.
Okay. Here's a question about electric vehicles. Let's see, to power an EV, can you have enough power to support a fast charger level 3? I'm not even sure what that means, but you tell me.
Yeah, it's we can do level 3 chargers AC. Now there are DC chargers out there. It's not most home arrays are not powerful enough to do a DC fast charger. But it depends on the size of your solar array, you know? Get a big enough solar array, we can figure it out. I love a good challenge.
Okay. Let's see. Anything else? Oh yeah. Are the federal tax credits still in place for 2021? And somewhat related question, does Solarize Philly support mixed use installations for buildings that are both residential and commercial?
Yes, Solarize Philly definitely does solar commercial, residential, mixed use for sure. Sorry, what was the first part of the question again?
Federal tax credits for
Oh.
2021?
Yes. So yes, the 26% federal tax credit was actually supposed to get cut down to 22% this year. The Biden administration extended it. Yay. So it's for 2 more years, it's going to be at 26%. Unclear what's going to happen after that.
Okay. And let's see, I just want to make sure that we addressed Mary Eno's question. Well, how much can you store solar on batteries?
So it really depends on the size of the solar and the amount of batteries you have. So the Tesla Powerwalls, I believe they come in 13 kilowatt hour increments, something like that. So you can you stack them, so you could get a 26 kilowatt hour battery by stacking 2 of them. If you have that size battery, the system we were looking at had 2 batteries, by the way. They could easily fill that up with the solar on a sunny day, as you saw. So they could even probably have handled 3 batteries potentially. It's all a sizing thing between the size of the battery and the size of the solar that you're installing.
Okay. Let's see.
I just want to show everyone how interesting my daughter finds me to be.
What? I can't see sleep inducing. Okay.
It's be nice. She's just young and tired.
It's past her bedtime, I guess. So I think we've pretty much covered everything. One of the architects in the room suggested that I put in a plug for architects. Like, architects can help you figure this out along with the installers and the roofers. Full disclosure, I'm an architect, but there are lots of other architects in Chestnut Hill, pretty much like one on every block. So anybody else?
Let me just highlight one interesting architectural thing. A guy by the name of Tim McDonald just built a really innovative building down on Front Street and completely wrapped the entire building in solar panels. It's the only time I've ever seen this. It's like Front and Berks. It's just an extraordinary thing. You know, if you can love it, you can hate it, but it's really neat to see somebody focus their architecture around sustainability in such a strong fashion. I really encourage everyone to take a look at that building.
Thank you. Maybe we'll get him next. Okay. Well, let me just see if there's one. Oh, that was just a thank you, that last chat. So I think we're closing in here on 8:15 or so. And I think at this point, if we could probably call it a night and hope for more sun tomorrow to keep powering those all those panels that you've installed throughout the city. When you think about what an impact that can make with 600 installations through Solarize Philly, that's pretty impressive. So thank you so much, both Micah and Chris. It's really informative and inspiring, and I'm happy that we have some, you know, some governmental, a government that's pro solar for now. So make the most of it.
Well, thank you so much, Jean. Great job moderating as usual. And thanks to everyone who made this happen, Micah and Chris especially. I'd like to thank you all again for coming out tonight and ask you to send your nominations for the Architectural Hall of Fame. We've inducted 20 special treasured buildings in Chestnut Hill. Which other ones would you like to see honored in this way? You can go onto our website, chconservancy.org, to see the other listed buildings and let us know what you'd like to add. And save the date for May 22nd, which is when we will do the big reveal of the Architectural Hall of Fame new inductees as chosen by public vote. So following that plug, I will just once again say thank you to everyone, and especially again, Jean, and good night.